Hello, welcome everybody to my first stream of 2017. This is International Master William Paschall. We are streaming from Budapest, Hungary as Slaggy on Twitch, and we are Sparkle Horse on lichess, streaming from lichess obviously. Happy New Year guys, it's 2017, Monday, the 2nd of the year, 2nd of January. We're going to be playing blitz and classical chess here with live commentary and banter, and playing against the viewers on the stream. If you guys like to play, please challenge me to some kind of increment. And base time between 5 and 8 minutes. Blitz or a classical between 5 and 8 minutes with a small increment, 3 to 5 seconds. So we are starting on Monday. Last week we started on Tuesday. We decided to start straight away here. Monday. We didn't stream yesterday. Yesterday was the first. I thought we'd take it off. So next Sunday, we'll be doing our first weekly simul on Sunday. This coming Sunday, the 8th. Is that right? No. That's right, the 8th. Doesn't seem right. Can that be the 8th? Yeah. Okay. Alright, the stream is up. We are looking good, and we're going to go and dig someone out of the quick game pool if we can, just to get warmed up. 5-3 blitz. I've never got a challenge successfully from the quick game feature yet, which is pretty new. I don't think a lot of people are challenging for these. The 3-2 I would think I would get a game, but it's kind of fast. Okay, Kiraya Kozpez is challenging me to 6-5, so we'll take that and bail on the so-called quick game feature, which I don't think a lot of people have really gotten used to yet. Okay, so last time we lost in Bird's opening against Kiraya Kozpez, Weird Wednesday last week. I made a crazy move with this weird capture with a pawn, and it wasn't an easy position to begin with, but I kind of committed harikiri. So this time we'll try to do a little bit better, but we're not forced to play an unusual opening, so we can play something inside our standard repertoire. Welcome, Sironche. Thank you for the Happy New Year wish. I wish you the same, and all the best with your New Year's resolution, whatever that may be. How was your New Year's Eve? Not too exciting. A little champagne. Knight f6, knight to c3. This actually crosses my plans a little bit. He played g6 now, and lately I've been doing a lot of like double fianchetto type of setups against the King's Indian. So I was hoping to do another one of those, but obviously we can't play the double fianchetto if we've got the knight on c3 effectively. So we're going to have to play some sort of... Well, we'll see. He could play the Grunfeld. My move order is actually a move order used by a lot of players who like to play the anti-Grunfeld. So they play this e4. It's perfectly okay to go e4 on move 3. Bishop g7. I didn't know that Kiraya Kozpez played the King's Indian. I know I've played the King's Indian against them and had some trouble because they seem to play the white side of the King's Indian really well. Well, we'll play classical for the Happy New Year. So knight on bd7. Yeah, I mean, anytime in the peerage you see this, sometimes you can go e5 and e6 and sacrifice a pawn to break up their pawn structure. Here, it also might be good. It's been a long time since I looked at this, but e5, take, knight g4, e6 takes. I might have played a game with Kiraya Kozpez in this before. I can't recall now, but I don't think I can do that unless I'm castled. No, this makes sense. E5, take, e6. E5, take, knight g4, e6 takes. But I'm not castled here. It's strange. So I can't allow him to take on f2, forking my queen and rook. I guess it just doesn't work in this position. It's amazing how often you see something and you don't remember that exact position cold like that. Not too many people play this move order for black. I used to play this for black, but I would play e5 on move 6 and then knight bd7 on move 7, or move 5 and move 6 respectively. So we're back to business, guys. There is a small chess tournament here in Budapest called the Béla Perényi Memorial. I was thinking about playing it, but it would be too disruptive to my starting on Thursday. But it's too disruptive to my work schedule, so I think I'm gonna bail on that. Maybe save my energies for teaching and working here on the stream. And I do have some team championship games coming up at the end of the month, so I'm not going without playing any competitive chess at all. I think in January I have games on the 22nd and the 29th in the Hungarian and Budapest team championships. I wish I could just play tournaments all year round, but unfortunately that's not possible. Okay, so now we're going into a position that I've played myself many times. I don't think that knight bd7 is as good as... Well, it's probably not as good as knight a6, but it's an old school line. It's fairly decent for black. It's a little bit passive compared to the Mar del Plata variation with knight c6, but it does leave some fluidity in the pawn structure. I never really liked the nature of this forced variations after knight c6, d5, knight e7. For black, I felt like black doesn't have a lot of options. Like the game controls itself, its own destiny. Like you don't have any choices in how you play that position after that. I just feel like the position is playing itself. So that's why I often prefer to play knight bd7 or knight a6 or e takes d or any kind of like side variations rather than the main line. Anyway, guys, Happy New Year. After playing a bunch of theoretical moves here, black plays queen c7. And this move that's very common in the this is very common in the old Indian, because there's obviously a bishop on e7, so the queen doesn't have that square to go to. But I prefer in the King's Indian to put it, if you must put it somewhere in a structure like this, I normally prefer e7. Obviously white has a rook on e1, which might make people reticent here. The main move is, I think, e takes d. E takes d, knight takes d4, and queen b6, probably main line. At least it used to be. The idea of bishop e3, knight, I think, wait, queen b6, rook b1, knight g4, something like that. Anyway, so queen c7 is non-invasive. I don't know what to call it. What would Walter Brown do? People we lost in 2016. Walter Brown tortured me on a few occasions in the King's Indian. Okay, so queen c7. It's a non-threatening move, really. I mean, it doesn't do anything constructive for black, so it is useful to get my rook off the long diagonal, since there is tension in the center. I mean, rook b1 is pretty standard. Getting this guy off the long diagonal, maybe preparing b4. But we're sort of short of time. This is basically a fancy like blitz game. It's 6-5. I don't have time to consider anymore, basically deeply the position. We've got time for basically about 10 games in this 2.5-hour stream that I do, each game being around 15 minutes or so. So here we are at move 10. I've used half my time, and I've got to play basically just a really quick blitz game. However, the 5-second increment is very comfortable. So if my 2 minutes runs out, don't give me any extra time. I can comfortably play the rest of the game. With the a5, stopping b4. I'm not sure I want to open the a file for black, actually. We'll just play quietly here. In my youth, I would have played very ambitiously here with like a3 and b4, but as I get older, I'm a little more circumspect, and I might be giving black a lot of counterplay along the a file. The most aggressive move is not always necessarily the best, and that may hold true here for something like a3, b4. Rook e8's a good move. I'm tempted to play d5. Looks a little premature. Not really sure how to maintain the tension here. Bishop a3 is interesting. It's a very aggressive move. But it does highlight the weak point in black's position. Having crazy thoughts. I mean, the d6 point. One of the ideas I thought about when I decided to play b3 rather than a3 and b4 I think we have a lot of choices here. Right. We do have knight to b5 in some positions. That could be simplest solution. Also, knight takes d5 is possible here. Knight takes d5, knight takes d5, pawn takes d5, rook takes e1, queen takes e1, bishop takes d4, queen e8 check, and mate to come. No, there's no mate. Never mind. That's not possible. All right. Then we will go for different line. That variation is going to be hallucinated. I had that. All right. Very well. This looks quite interesting. There's the d6 square. The black queen is quite awkward, as I mentioned earlier. He didn't play enough rated games to get a real rating in classical. That's why the question mark. Yeah, I mean, we're never playing rated games here on the stream, really. So, despite the fact that he's played a lot of games with me, it's still provisional. But I think we were pretty lucky here. Managed to win a clear pawn. This is not really what black had in mind. I'm not sure if it was better to take with the queen on d5. I don't really know. It's difficult to calculate. There, knight takes e5, knight to e5 was interesting, I thought. Not exchanging pieces. Would have been the most combative move for black. Now, obviously, this passed pawn should be close to winning the game. But he has some counterplay. Forgot he had that move, to be honest with you. Okay, I just lost a pawn back here. Because of the time, we were totally winning. Black's better. Maybe not now. Beat me last game, and this time he came close again. We're in a little bit of time pressure, guys, so I apologize for not commenting more here. We should be better here. Black's still very active, though. So if he defends perfectly, he's possibly still okay. He's very fast. The 5-second increments are really plenty. This game could go on quite long. We can win a pawn. He's getting some counterplay if I try to win a pawn in that way. So I wanted to wait. Oh, I just could have won a piece. Sorry. Yeah, that wasn't the best move, was it? Could have won a piece, guys. A slight inaccuracy there. If I take on h6, my bishop is a little bit trappable. So I wanted to go for the a pawn instead. Whoa. There's some counterplay with knight to d6 here. Alright, well, a game basically decided by time pressure, I guess. We've got challenges from Poppitz, who's 2200 from Austria. Classical rating of 301 games. We have played once before. HGGG 5-5 Resignanian 8-4. It's all right. 8-4 is fine. I like to keep it at 8-3 Resignanian, but it's like you don't have to re-challenge me to change 1 second in the increment. Just leave it. Constant change Kiddo from Kazakhstan, just normally 5-3, but I'll let it go as long as it's unrated. And Sovik needs to re-challenge to something like with an increment. Between 5 and 8 minutes with an increment. Alright, so basically the challenges, no rated challenges, and the increments are a little weird, but it's okay. We're going to go on to the next game, Poppitz. So, alright guys, welcome to 2017. It was not the greatest year, 2016, but we survived it, and we're on to 2017. Poppitz from Austria. 2267. He only plays classical, nothing else. Well, we'll keep it on the theme of playing c4. So we had this the other day, the same line. It's pretty popular. I was talking about Spanish-American Grandmaster Arizmendi Martinez. That's the only game I've ever lost in this line, years ago in Bermuda. I feel comfortable with white. You know, it's like a Gurgenidze Caro-Kann structure, but black's definitely a little bit overextended with e4 and f5. We were playing, I think, Zidane, or I'm not sure. I think it was this player Zidane last time. Played interesting setup with c6 and knight a6, kind of like making it hard for white to decide what to do. If you do c6 and knight a6, bishop e7 pretty much forces knight h3. Yeah, I mean, I don't think h4 is an option here, obviously, so this is a little easier to, you know, figure out what the plan is, but well, there are different options you can set up. If you look at the position, it's kind of like a Caro-Kann or French advanced variation. You could play simply like French style. I've seen Larry Kaufman do that. Bishop g5. I'm not sure. You know, I like to get that bishop outside the pawn chain. You may argue it's not the best approach with the bishop on e7, but that's technically his good bishop. I mean, he has a couple of pawns on white squares, and that's the main part of his pawn formation is on white squares here. So this is technically his good bishop. If he exchanges that piece, it's probably beneficial for me. playing faster than me. But it's an anonymous account. I have played one game with this player. Let me see if it was Simul. No, it was 8-3 down to the kings. It's 2265. Here, trying to play knight e6. Trade off my knight, maybe. I mentioned Caro-Kann Gergenidze. It's very similar to that. This is not the only way that I could play, I guess, but this is how I've learned to play it. Bishop e2, probably h4, king f1, king g2, possibly castles long, possibly king d2, depending on what's going on in the position. The white king has at least like 3 viable places to go, depending on what goes down here. You know, philosophically or strategically, he doesn't really want to trade his good bishop for my bad bishop. So he's castled. So far avoided weakening by committing to d5 or h6. No pawn weaknesses. Yeah, this is pretty much what I figured. Now we have the interesting possibility of h4. h4, knight takes g5, h takes g5, knight goes somewhere. It's a little risky. Although actually maybe I have to consider it. We can simply exchange on e6, but it brings his bishop out with tempo. h4, take, 98, g6, h6, something like that. It should be okay for me. Guys, let's get some discussion going in the chat room. I've forgot to remind everyone, I have a YouTube channel. We will be updating that by creating a new video every week that I can. Some kind of independent instructional videos. Bishop takes f4 is fine. Maybe kind of a tough call, but maybe it's safer than taking with the pawn here. I wouldn't mind taking with the pawn. It's playable. I guess this is a little more solid. I doubt I'm going to be able to beat this guy. It looks like a very tough position to crack. But in many games I've played g takes f in this kind of position. G takes f, h6, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, h5. But that's also kind of a standstill. I mean, it just feels like all I can do is kind of block the position. Black's played this pretty accurately. The only way I could conceivably break through would be maybe like a g4 type of pawn break. f3 is much riskier. It weakens my pawn on e3. So we have to decide what to do with the king at some point. My queen side, b4 would be a normal expansion on the queen side. This is the standard Gurgenidze-Caro-Kann king safety plan. Bishop walks in the Gurgenidze, often like you're black in the Caro-Kann with g6. Your bishop goes back to f8 and then to e7, and the king walks manually from f8 to g7. Same idea here. Now I'm thinking about b4, but I'm not all that well developed on the queen side. Just can complete our plan here. Looks like black is equalized. No shame in that though, because it seems like every opening where black plays correctly equalizes in modern chess. So if it's equal, it just means both sides play correctly. I don't think that white can really keep an advantage by force in the openings if black plays correctly. Interesting that he took with the bishop here, not with the pawn, opposite my king. I was thinking about playing rook c1. The bishop takes a2, b3. It's quite complicated. The problem with queen c2, he might have counterplay pretty quickly there. Maybe queen d2. Queen a4, a5. Maybe this move's okay. If he tries anything like b5, I'm going to play a4. It looks like black's played perfectly. Now he's a little bit better with the bishop on d5, sort of shadowing my king on g2. What was this game? I have no idea that would be played. I have to exchange bishops there. I have to exchange all bishops. Bishop's too strong on d5. I don't think he can sacrifice a piece with f4. Rook takes f4. Probably defend myself. Take with the g-pawn. I feel like I'm definitely lucky to hold a draw here. Spilled my water. so stressed by this game. I spilled my water. So guys, tell me what you did for New Year. Queen e6, bishop takes e6, pawn takes e6, bishop takes e6, queen takes e6. Yeah, this looks equal. Fortunately, he didn't have time to get in this f4 pawn sacrifice. I still have to keep an eye on it. But I might have, like, e takes f in some positions. I definitely want to keep an eye on that, though. My king is not as safe as black's, but it could be more useful in an ending. Where is my elephant? I stayed home and watched some chess. Watch what? Twitch chess. I didn't do a lot for New Year's Eve. Some other responsibilities rather than partying. Played queen d7 now. He's trying to... Yeah, he's trying to get in some kind of f4 type of stuff. We'll keep g4 under control while seeking our own play. Queen f7. Pretty tricky guy. It's funny that he's got only classical games and nothing else. Usually those people have multiple accounts, I've noticed, who are playing just one time control. They've got one account for classical chess, one account for another time control, etc., etc. Alright, well, I don't need this rook on h1 anymore at the moment. I think it's done its job behind that h-pawn, so he's going with this. But honestly, a4 is a pretty double-edged move. I mean, you're giving me b4, and after all that time, when was it? Very early on. I mean, I think we can make the argument that white has a better structure. We have, hopefully we're going to have a protected passed pawn. It's not the most monstrous protected passed pawn in the history of chess, but it is something. Well, I see queen takes would allow a2 to drop, which isn't really the most stable way to play the position. So rook c8. I was talking about the kings. If we get into like a rook ending or something like that, relative king positions could be very important. I think he's probably in some trouble here. Because of the back rank. Yeah, I guess he's... facing a threat of mate, and I have very strong passed pawn myself, so white's probably winning. It's not that easy, admittedly. Queen c2. Might have a defense. I doubt it, though. His only checking square is f3, and that's covered. I figured I'd play h5. What if I play queen e8 here? Queen e8, queen e7. The problem is that this falls, and then I can play queen d4. Or, well, anything. Yeah, it's over. Okay. So, a good lesson in the power of that protected passed pawn, and the king position didn't really come into play there. HGGG. 5-5. Another pseudo blitz game. I have a couple dinners with families and then hang out with my friends. Sounds like a good plan, man. So, that's Resignanian. Knight f3. Alright, guys. What are the New Year's resolutions? I'm not really a big one on concrete New Year's resolutions. Alright, so we got symmetrical English. I've got to play g6 here. Because of my repertoire, I can play the accelerated dragon. Actually, it's not really a normal accelerated dragon. It's safer to play like knight f6 there if you don't play the accelerated dragon or this variation of the Panov, which I do. You can also play bishop g7, Korchnoi Fischer. But this is a specialty variation that I've analyzed quite a bit. And it is, or it was, kind of trendy. I don't know if it's died down. I haven't checked the latest games in the database, but this is a variation that was being played quite a bit for a while. I think Fabiano was playing this for black. At least he's the strongest player I'm sure has played this for black. So, Lou Barlow's so welcome, man. Bishop b5. Strangely, I had the feeling that somebody else played this against me very recently here. It could have been HGGG, but it could have been someone else. And I recall that I missed something. I think I missed something when I analyzed this the first time, if I remember correctly. Obviously, we can play bishop g7, but then knight e5. I think I played something strange, like bishop g7, knight e5, bishop d7. wonder if you could even just sack a pawn. It doesn't matter now. He just played that. Oh, it was later that I made a mistake. I remember. It was later that I made a mistake here. I got a bad game against somebody because there was an exchange on c6 and I didn't play c5 right away or something like that. It was a matter of taking back on c6 and not playing c5 immediately when I had the chance. So I remember, I don't know if it was against you, HG, but it was against someone, and it wasn't that long ago. It was probably the weeks leading up to when I went to Prague in early December. Now h3, this is like some kind of weird Tarrasch reversed. Do recall there was like a couple random games in the database. But bishop b5 is not considered a great move. White's supposed to play queen b3 here. And the other move is bishop c4. And they can actually transpose. Okay, so h3 looks a tidbit slow. But what am I supposed to do? There's no good place for this bishop in this position. No obvious move here either for black. I'm like fascinated with queen a5 in this position. That just loses material. Okay. I'm just going to try to keep it simple somehow. We've only got 2 minutes. It's essentially a blitz game. Again, one of those deceptive time controls where I think I have 7 or 8 minutes and I don't. I have just 5, so. Although this move bishop b5 isn't theoretical, it's a developing move and it's not bad for white. It just kind of gives away white's chance for probably achieving anything concrete as far as an advantage, but I don't think it's a concretely bad move. You'd see it's just kind of hanging out there, not doing anything. I could also play bishop d7. It looks okay, but obviously a bit on the passive side. I chose to exchange on c3. It's fixing his pawns, so to speak, and making these hanging pawns. But the hanging pawns themselves are usually very easy to target in these kind of structures, so it's a pretty standard plan for black, I would think. Bishop b2. Got good chances of blockading the hanging pawns. We need to blockade those hanging pawns. I also get this kind of structure a lot in the Petrov defense sometimes. A lot sometimes. Okay, we've got 4 challenges from Rezignanian constant change. Suvik needs to change the time control. I told you that. I don't play 10-0 in the stream. And 1 question IQ test. So if you need to change it to something like 8-3 or 7-3. Thank you for the kind wishes, Lou Barlow's soul, for the Happy New Year, and everybody, I wish you the same. Got a number of blitz. This is actually more like a blitz game. You can call it classical if you want to, but to me this is a blitz game. Okay, so there's possible exchange sacrifices on e6 in some positions. This one doesn't look like white's really quite set up for that. Bishop c4. Simply play a6. Where's his bishop going? I wanted to preempt queen a4. So if I play bishop c4 right away, white could play queen a4 there. This way, if I play bishop c4 later on, I'll have b5. Does the real Lou Barlow really watch this channel? We don't know. Wouldn't be surprising. Wouldn't be all that surprising. You know, geniuses tend to gravitate toward each other, so. Just kidding, guys. Should I go for this? I think so, dude. It's down to 41 seconds. Let's trade some pieces. It's a standard Tarash blockade. I was seriously thinking about bishop d5. Maybe that's even better than bishop c4. His bishop's kind of buried on f1. But we're getting a little low on the clock, so I thought trading some pieces might not be a bad idea here. To keep things a little more simplified. A few less pieces to keep track of might help me. Not to make some kind of catastrophic miscalculation. Although bishop d5, you gotta consider that to be a very serious move in this position. Preferable to the text. This is obviously quite good for black as well. All right, I have no qualms with taking the bad bishop actually. It could become a good bishop. Let's just take it. You know, it's going to go back to c1. I don't want to be dogmatic. We've got a good bishop. His knight is so-so. Yeah, that's right. a4. Probably best. Yeah, I'm afraid we don't have too much here. We're running out of time. Running out of time. Maybe this wasn't the best move, rook c8. Oh, that's probably okay. This was kind of a surprise. Okay, it's getting pretty random now. Queen d3. He could have taken twice on b5, traded everything. This may amount to the same thing, actually. If he takes all my pawns on a6 and a4, we're probably a tiny bit better. Someone just mentioned e5. It's not a bad moment for that. Just because of the hanging queen here. Black is not worse. I don't know if it's probably a draw though, objectively. Just not enough pawns left on the board. White didn't play too bad. I guess bishop c4 was, and then I also initiated the second exchange on b2, which was certainly not forced. What am I doing? Oh man! All right. My A pawn is looking like it's gonna fall. Actually, I had rook takes c3 there. No, I didn't. I forgot he was double protected. That rook is that would be a bad blunder to play rook takes c3. Man, I'm about to lose on time. Okay, fair enough. Good game. I guess we both made some inaccuracies, but yeah, it was too many exchanges by black. First bishop c4 instead of bishop d5, and then knight takes b2. Even after that, I have the feeling that I'm just a tiny bit better, but it's probably not enough to win. If I really want to win, I have to play without exchanging pieces. Okay, Resignanian. This is a tough player. Now it's my turn, says Suvik. Suvik, how's your time control challenge? 8-3. Yeah, you're close. Suvik says now it's my turn. Yeah, there's constant change, one question IQ test, Suvik, and spinal tap. Alright, Resignanian, I don't remember. You played the c3 Sicilian? Were you the one who plays the c3 Sicilian? I don't recall now. It's been too long. So you could still play c3. But maybe you're not the guy who plays the c3 Sicilian. Because I thought there was a guy from Latvia who plays c3 Sicilian, but it wasn't you? Maybe it was you and you graduated to playing the main line. I don't know. What are we playing here? Oh yeah, okay. People tend to get dogmatic about blitz and rapid chess. Moadi123 says, I read a few quotes that blitz chess is terrible for actual chess skill besides opening practice. Does it really hurt? Well, here's what my take is. That I think that it's going to hurt if, like, that's almost all you do. You know what I mean? If you don't play in tournaments and you play just blitz all the time, you know, you're going to have no feel for playing long games. So, as far as, like, blitz actually damaging your chess, I don't really think so. You know, with bullet chess, I make that argument. You know, if we're playing like ridiculous time controls of 1 minute or, you know, 30 seconds, where all that matters is like clicking the mouse really fast and that becomes the main thing, I think that can be damaging. But if you're playing a sensible time limit in blitz, I don't think it's damaging. I think that most world champions would have played, you know, blitz on a regular basis for training purposes. So I got transposed into some sort of like Khan Sicilian here. We can still backdoor into like a kind of Scheveningen, because I don't really play the Paulsen or whatever. Resignanian's move order was good. He didn't let me trick him into anything funny with queen c7, and I'm back into kind of Scheveningen again with an early queen c7. I don't think there's anything great that white can do to black. You know, he can't like triple on the d pawn, or maybe he can. Let's see. Well, it would be like a weird Kalashnikov if he tried something like knight e5, I don't know. So g3, this is actually going to transpose to a line that I've studied before, I think. Except his bishop's on e3. Bishop's on e3 very early. Normally that piece would go either to f4 or g5 in these g3 variations. Yeah, but my queen doesn't... My queen doesn't belong on c7 either. I've been in this position once before. In a stream game, I think. And it seems to me that my queen doesn't belong here. His bishop's developed early, but my queen is developed early as well. Let's play a6. The bishop e3 will inhibit any kind of like rook e1 and knight d5 sort of ideas. White has these piece sacrifices, the bishop g2, castles, rook e1, knight d5. So hopefully he doesn't have any of that sort of nonsense that you might normally get. I don't think the bishop e3 is dangerous. Is that dangerous for me? So if in other words, if he had rook e1 instead of bishop e3, I'd be facing like very, very nasty type of knight d5 stuff. But in this particular position, it doesn't doesn't appear to be dangerous. Now a4, Michael Adams, and I could play knight a5, but it takes away control of the center. So I would rather not do that if I have the option not to. He's not threatening a5 right away. He's going to need to play knight b3, and then I'll have time to make some kind of decision. Bishop e7, knight b3, knight a5, knight takes a5, queen takes a5, e5, pawn takes e5, bishop takes b7. Rook b8. It's probably not so bad for black. Alright. We've seen all my ideas now. Trains your brain to think the wrong way. Overemphasizing things like short-term tactics and playing for time. It's like everything else. It's just a matter of moderation. I don't think that blitz is bad for your game, but you have to not let it be the main, main thing. Your main thing, that's all you do. It's just one element of like, if you want to become a strong player, I think that blitz chess is one element of. It trains you to think quickly. It can be a very, very useful thing. It's obviously needed in many instances nowadays. Time controls are getting faster and faster, so I think we'd be mistaken to live in a fantasy world, where we have 2 hours for 40 moves and 20 moves for another. The time controls have gotten faster and faster, so I think it makes sense that we should put more emphasis on fast training. Here's a tough call. Knight takes c6. Pawn takes or bishop takes. They're both viable. All right. I mean, if I play bishop takes, he has a5 with a kind of lasting, long-term pressure. Here he still has a5, obviously. Maybe it was safer to play bishop takes. Simpler, anyway. Then what am I going to do if knight a4, for example? a5 and knight a4. I'll have to take it. No, bishop takes a5, castles, knight a4, knight d7. And that was a safer way for me to play. This was riskier, more complicated. I do have good central control, though. Yeah, I went against my better judgment here. Bishop takes is easier to play. I was a little scared of b4, b5 actually. But that's kind of anti-positional, you have to admit. Triumphant. Well, I think the time controls are getting faster and faster, so I mean, all of the top players are very well versed in blitz. Even Peter Lecco did pretty well in the World Blitz Championship. Was ranked 11th or something. And he's certainly not a famed blitz player, but he is quite strong, obviously. So, yeah, I regret playing b takes c. Normally it's good, but we have a problem with this bishop. He has the b6 square. And I have to make sure I keep a6 protected. Exchange sacrifices. Exchange sacrifices, not not really. I could play c5, and if e5, give up the exchange, or just play knight d5, c5, e5, knight d5, pawn takes d6, bishop takes d6. I don't know if that's really sound. Rook b8. I guess I have to play this. I don't really see another option. Rook b8. I'm a little worried about my a6 pawn. So we could play bishop c8 if we have to. Sort of horrible. It would have been much better to take with the bishop on c6. Okay. Try to find a way out of this mess. So, well, given my options, now he plays c4, but that's okay. It seems like this way I have a means of unraveling. Now, in the utopian world, I get absolute control of d4, which is something I have achieved before in these g3 Sicilians. We can get in knight d7, knight b8, knight c6, knight d4, bishop f6, everything. And then it's just ownership of d4 and white is resigning. But it's not that easy to achieve. Nevertheless, I feel like we're out of the woods on our way to grandmother's house, and there's no wolf in the forest. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but Forum general discussion. Yeah, I'm sure you guys can hit the lichess forum there. We are picking off a pawn, it appears. There's a nasty little tactic sitting here. Maybe I should play like bishop. What a timely move. Rookie, maybe rook e8, but then he has e5. It's not going to change anything in the grand scheme of things, is it? Just to make sure this is protected, so any of this fancy, like sacrificing a piece, which I know he's thinking about, isn't on the lunch menu today. We've got a strong player in the list here, Spinal Tap. Well, he's not the only strong player, but much stronger as far as rating than the other players. Not to diss you other guys who are like 2100. But it's not every day we get to play another IM. 11:12. So, guys, we're streaming till 12:30. We have about an hour and 20 minutes left. So that's 5 or 6 games, hopefully. This worked out. We got to play a constructive move defending our bishop on e7. Neutralize the bishop on g2. We have the d4 square under control. The bishop is stuck on b6. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Well, he sacked a pawn to free himself. Or did he? Did he really? Maybe he didn't really even sack a pawn. Bishop b7? Bishop a8? What should I do? Oh, brother. I don't know, guys. Your creative move. b4 followed by knight a2. I never would have found that. And now what? I have a slightly better structure, whatever that's worth. We just calmly play like this. Double attack. The important thing is this guy. Well, I guess I'm threatening queen takes c4 as well. Queen a4. Where do you get that idea from? Rook takes. Having strange hallucinations. Well, we have a slightly better structure. I don't know that that's enough to win the game, but wow, what a move. Queen a5. Why couldn't you take knight takes a6 there? This is just better. Strange. Wanted to activate this guy anyway. No weaknesses. This is a little bit of weakness. I'd be willing to give that up. Why didn't you take that guy before, actually? Okay, now at this point it looks like we've consolidated. Consolidated for what it's worth. Famous last words. Yeah, he just hallucinated. Alright. Yeah, that's the point. I drove you away from A1. Alright, Resignanian. I'm not real convinced with my handling of that with B take C. I think you probably had a decent game, but got tangled up. Okay, constant change, 2136. He's working his way up to 2200. We'll continue the theme today, flank openings. Tomorrow, guys, is Tuesday, right? So Wednesday is my unusual openings day where I play gambits and different systems that I don't normally play. Call it Weird Wednesday. Constant change with knight to c6. Let's go ahead and play e4. Alright, so bishop b5, the Lopez. I was going to play just flank openings today, but I was a little bored with honestly, like knight f3, knight c6, d4. My favorite line against the Chigorin Queen's Gambit is like with d4, c4, and knight c3. So I hate to play the white side without that. But sometimes I'm playing like knight f3, people are playing d5, I'm playing g3, and then people are playing knight c6. I have to play g3 against the Chigorin. I'm prepared for everything. We've got a pretty wide repertoire here, in our streams at least. Okay, constant change. So I don't recall constant change playing the black side of the mainline Lopez. That's what it's going to be. We had our first ever open Lopez on the stream the other day, which was a very quick knockout. This particular variation is quite trendy. There's something about this move order doesn't seem quite as good as playing queen c7 before exchanging on d4. In this case, we have the option to play knight to c3. And I think that's supposed to be good for white. There's some Ivanchuk game that I was studying with a friend of mine this summer. It's not really a typical move order for black. Much more standard to play queen c7 first. So maybe constant change is following a game I already played here, or maybe bishop d7 is also possible. But I think that d5 is okay for white. I'm not mistaken. The problem with constant change is that he just plays too fast. We're talking about people who are playing bullet or blitz and playing too quickly. Yeah, he's just insta-moving. I mean, what's the point? I mean, you should just play in like a bullet stream or something. Knight d7. This is faster than he's ever played before, but I'm fairly confident that black's position is not really good. It's okay. It's not like losing, but I don't think it's the best. Not sure about... Okay, obviously knight c5 is a threat. I don't know where I'm going to put my bishop. Maneuver the knight. Maybe I could have tried something different here. Well, not really. I mean, I have to do something about the threat of b4 forces me. I could have played rook e2, but then my knight has nowhere to go. No, I think this is okay so far. And then we can play bishop f1, bishop e3, walks into knight c4. I guess my initial plan was to play knight e2. Then knight c5 looks good for black. I'm not really sure. If we made a mistake here or what. I thought that d5 was the move that was recommended. I could be wrong. He's used no time. The one thing that happens when they start maneuvering this way, like sometimes the black king side doesn't have as much defense. You have to think about that. All the pieces moving to the queen side for black. So sometimes we have a king side attempt, a chance to attack on the king side. Again, bishop f1 may not be that stupid. At least in that kind of position, I feel like I have a handle on what's going on. And it's a little bit like a King's Indian type position. We have space to compensate for the C file. But other moves, I didn't really see anything other than something like knight h2. Instead of bishop f1, maybe knight h2, with the idea of like knight to g4 and knight e3 to clamp down on f5, for example. So here, this move. That's the only other idea I can really come up with here. I guess bishop f1 could wait until he actually plays knight to c5. But then again, I'm not sure, because in some instances, he might have b4, and then my knight goes to e2, and I'll drop the pawn on e4. Well, that's still the case. Obviously, if he plays c5, knight c5 here, I have b4. Which doesn't even necessarily win anything. Anyway, guys, I want to welcome you to my stream while we've got a minute. It's always difficult to play somebody like Constant Change because he doesn't take his time, and I never have time to make any announcements or talk during the game, really. Well, if you guys want to know my honest opinion, seeing there's some discussion in the stream about improving, I think analyzing complete games annotated by the players themselves is probably the best way to improve. And analyzing your own games would fit into that category, I guess. You can learn by doing, or you can learn by other people doing. Wow, all these pieces migrated to the other side. Let's go for it. I mean, this is not that dangerous with the fianchetto bishop here on g2 coming up, and no black pieces on the king side. He's just fishing. We're just migrating to the other side here. Migration. Anyway, I don't have time to make announcements when I'm playing this guy, but normally I'd have a little bit of time. I want to just draw your attention to my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. I haven't uploaded any new independent videos in a while, but I am going to start this coming week. So every week I'm going to create some kind of new material on my YouTube channel, whether it's a review of some games I played here, maybe analysis of an opening, or other independent stuff. I think now we can play b3 and kick him out, and he's in trouble. Doesn't have any plan. It's a serious problem. The knight is in a lot of trouble. Has to go back to a5, and his whole position starts to creak, as they say in the UK. But still, it's hardly game over. Still can't trap the knight or anything like that. Ultimately, I'd like to attack on the king side. Little third rank rook lift. We could take over the c file. Oh, he sees everything. It's ridiculous. Problem is, if b4, he's able to use the c4 square, so it's not that easy. Although it might be enough, you know, just to kill the knight on b7, kill the bishop on a8. Maybe b4 wasn't a bad idea. He's got a huge time advantage. He moves instantaneously. It's very hard to play this kind of positional game when the other guy doesn't give you any time to think about it. I also want to let you guys know that if anybody's interested in taking lessons, I have availability, and my prices are reasonable. So going into 2017, if you guys are interested in chess training, send me an email, videochesstrainer@gmail.com. Don't go anywhere else. Okay, so knight c5, that's unfortunate. Maybe I should have played b4 right away. Although it's very strange for black, I think, to avoid exchanges in this kind of position. He's actually avoiding exchanges of his own volition. Fundamentally, that's not right. He's got a cramped position, and I think that exchanging rooks there would have been a little more usual, but I think he wants to keep it complicated because he has more time. Basically plays for time every game. Not my recommendation. I've told him this a lot, but he doesn't seem to change his ways. The score you see here isn't because he's a bad player, it's because he tends to play too quickly. I think his legitimate strength is you know, probably expert strength, but just he should have more points, but he's just often like losing with 2 or 3 minutes more than me. Have you been able to make your schedule work with any students in the USA? Yeah, I mean, it's obviously awkward if students in the USA only are available in the evening. But afternoon time, or early evening is okay. I mean, I'm working until midnight here, so until more or less like 6 p.m. So even people that work, we can work out a time between like 5 and 6 or something. But it's not easy. It's not as easy, obviously. It is a little tricky. Sometimes weekends and sometimes between 5 and 6 or so. I might be able to meet a little bit later than that, but not too much. King G7. Yeah, he's got the spatial problem here. We've got space on both sides of the board. And not really space. Well, the D5 does... Yeah, we do have space on that side too. So, what do I do now? Queen H6 doesn't really do it. B4, knight A4. I don't want to let this time get down anymore. Than it already is. Just trying to gain a little time on the clock. I think the white is clearly better, but it's maybe slightly better. H6. We'll say slightly better. Bishop G7. That's interesting. My ability to play on both sides of the board here. I was, unwilling to do this before because he had Bishop E7. Look at this move. Whoa, how does that work? Almost lost on time there. But I think he's falling apart. Knight F6. What? Couldn't move my mouse fast enough. This is probably a winning position for white. My mouse sometimes gets like, it's a wireless mouse, so it got stuck, but it's okay. It's nothing but an unrated game. All right, mouse, it's your fault. So, one question IQ test. That was doubtful position for black. But time. Time is very important. We learned a lot from that game. One question IQ test. We're going to play the Caro-Kann, something different. With C6. Wireless mouse, thank you. I talked about replacing my mouse, but it's functionally perfect. Just occasionally you have to reboot it, and that's not worth like trashing in and getting a new one. Okay, C6, D4, D5. Anyway, guys, we'll just move on. We've got Spinal Tap up next. Miots from Rwanda. We have played before. Etatsuar and PQLLED. Possibly if we can play 4 games or so. Caro-Kann. Vashon chess. I'm gonna just mow these guys down in 3 minutes. Actually, there's a lot of blitz games today. So usually we have 7-8 minute games. We've had a lot of 5-5s. It's considerably faster than the 8-3. So this one is another quicker game. Spinal Tap. Vashon chess. I think we will play that game for sure. It's the other two that I would worry about. One question IQ test. Well, knight d7 here, I guess. It does avoid, yesterday or the other day I played h4, e6 like Nakamura played against Leiko at the World Rapid Championship. Now here, knight h4. In general, I think that, like I've talked about this kind of thing with the knights versus bishops in Scandinavian / Caro-Kann type structures. My personal opinion, it's very hard to use those bishops in this type of structure advantageously, particularly the dark squared bishop. It's next to impossible for black to use that piece advantageously in these type of structures. Very, very hard. So, I'm not at all concerned about losing my bishop for a knight. Anyway, enough chatter. We could play e5. But I feel like that almost helps white, to be perfectly honest. We'll just let you have the bishop pair. I really don't mind. And plus I get the open file for my rook. Catapus, welcome. Happy New Year. Who won the Blitz Championship? Karyakin won the World Blitz Championship. Kind of a surprise. I mean, I guess he's gained a lot of confidence since qualifying for the World Championship and becoming World Champion runner-up or whatever, but he seemed to be playing with a lot of confidence, like he was really the number 2 player in the world or something. In a very impressive field too. Bishop d2. I was just talking about how this bishop is kind of pathetic in these Caro-Kann type of structures. And what's he up to here? Bishop d2? What could you possibly be trying to do? Just stop the check on a5? Play b4? That is a very strange move. Anyway. One thing I talked about with one of my students who played this kind of structure in the Slav, normally in the Caro-Kann, you're often in the Slav, you're often thinking about breaking the center. I think black needs to be careful about doing the c5 and e5 because you may be helping white, essentially. You may be helping white to open the position for the 2 bishops. The check on b4, well, okay, it's not ridiculously bad. The bishop doesn't really have any great squares, period. So, although typically you want to put it on f4, I guess, where at least it cuts across this diagonal and stops me from playing bishop d6. I mean, that's like a typical Caro-Kann motif. You'd play bishop f4, then maybe queen a5 check, then the bishop would come back to d2 and the queen would go back to c7, taking control of this diagonal. Catapus says, I very much like Karyakin's modesty. I don't know him personally. He's a competitor. He's also immensely experienced for his age. If you think about, Karyakin's been playing longer than the other prodigies, like Nakamura, and not longer, but I mean he's been at the elite level a little longer than those other players his age. So he has more experience, more games. c4. This changes things, becoming more like a queen pawn opening. Now I'm more into c5 and e5 because this bishop will be more restricted by the pawn on c4. I'm not as afraid of making one of these breaks. Maybe e5 is going to be tempting. watching the World Championship as a much nicer guy. Well, I don't know. I'm not like I'm not biased in any way. I mean, I don't think that I'm a fan of either of them, but I don't think you can judge people by like one event, you know. Maybe Carlsen was just in a bad mood, under a lot of pressure or something, you know. I mean, I think maybe Carlsen's behavior wasn't as good at this one particular event, but that doesn't make him a bad guy. I wouldn't judge somebody by one tournament or match or whatever. He was under a lot of pressure, so I think you gotta cut people a little bit of slack. Bishop d6. I'm not a Carlsen fan, so I'm saying that as like an objective, independent voice. In general, Carlsen isn't considered to be like somebody who behaves horribly. He doesn't have a reputation like Nakamura, where he's constantly been a brat in his youth. So I think compared to a lot of prodigies, Magnus Carlsen is really modest. I mean, I know a lot of 2600s who behave like much worse than Magnus Carlsen does. You know, I think it's you know, I've played a lot of strong players, and a lot of them are very arrogant. And I don't think that Magnus Carlsen is in the top like 25% of that list. And especially, I've met him and played him in person. He doesn't strike me as one of the worst defenders in terms of like bad sportsmanship or something like that. But it's a question of maybe he was under a lot of stress in this particular situation. Why aren't you a Carlsen fan? I mean, I don't have anything against him. I just don't really like his style that much. I just don't really have that much in common with him stylistically. He's a practical player. He's maybe the greatest, definitely the greatest practical chess player of all time. I don't really like him as a world champion, you know. I don't like him as much as, this is a blunder, I don't like him as much as Kasparov or Karpov or Fischer or Botvinnik or almost any other world champion I can think of. That's all I can say, you know. But I can't condone like saying Carlsen is a brat when he didn't behave like a brat against me. I mean, I can't, you know. Maybe he's become worse, and it's a lot of stress though, you know. But I've played other 2600s who behaved like monsters, you know, and a lot weaker than that too, obviously. So it's when you've encountered like just horrible first-hand behavior from title players, I guess I'm pretty forgiving about Magnus's recent behavior. Is not that bad. It's all relative. Where's the mate? I thought I had mate. I sacked a piece here, and I thought I had mate, but uh-oh. 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 Maybe I was a little too ambitious. We have something here. We have something here. Wait. Oh, man, this just works. Whew. I was thinking, man, I messed this up, but I mean, if I could get my rook to h8, it would be an easy mate, but I can only judge people by what I've seen, you know. And I've seen some pretty bad stuff from others, but oh man, he has this defense. Come on. Are you kidding me? There's no mate, no nothing here. This is really irritating. I thought it was just forced game over, but not. We're going to have to win this game all over again. I'm certain that wasn't the best move by me. Now I'm just up like 3 pawns, but... One question IQ says, it makes me happier than you know to irritate you. Well, that's reassuring. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what we really aim for. Viewers like that. Anyway, this pawn should be White could have played d5 last move. I thought that was a little bit of counterplay. Now we have rook d8. Spinal Tap up next. Guys, don't challenge me anybody else, because we only have time for like three more games. I think that's it. Rook d8 should pretty much take most of the fun out of this for White. At the very least. He's not going to be irritating me anymore. We lost one game on time today. Interesting position. I thought I was clearly better. But only truth will tell. I have the built-in excuse of the optical mouse malfunctioning. It's always handy to have that. But there's no other explanation for not being able to make a move in like 7 seconds. Okay, c takes d5, rook takes d5. You're playing really good now. Strong knights. Knights versus bishops. Yeah, good D. So I don't know what's the point here. Yeah. I can read your mind. Well, I think at some point I can afford to give you a pawn back. That will be probably sooner than later. What do I do to make progress now, though? It is kind of awkward here. How do I make progress? Now finally he took. Oh, I thought your rook was on e3. Okay, so you just gave me a piece basically. Not that way. Still very hard to finish you off. Alright guys, we're going to play Spinal Tap. This is a serious game. And then we've got me outs. And probably one more. I think there'll be time for 3 games. Since these are longer time controls. Alright. Strong opponent. Last time I swindled a draw down 2 pawns. I'm very proud of my defense in that game. This time, we'll see what happens. One game a long time ago I played with Spinal Tap. Then there's this... So, I've been playing mostly g3. I don't know. I don't like c4 because of d4. I guess he plays the Slav, if I remember correctly. Maybe he plays a lot of stuff. You seem like an irritable guy, but I don't care. I'm just here for the chess. Is that the guy? Are you the guy that I just played? Yeah, obviously I'm very irritable. Bishop g4. Thanks for the positive comment. Bishop g4. Yeah, this has been... But it's actually funny to play bishop g4 without c6, isn't it? I mean, normally they're playing c6 to kind of block this diagonal. And Spinal Tap playing it like straight up like that. Now, I actually played this position myself with black at a recent tournament in Harkon against a much, much lower rated player. I know that knight e5 is supposed to be like the critical line. Problem is I don't really know the theory too well. You can also play c takes d. That seems kind of early. I mean, I know this variation. I've definitely played this position before. But I think that all the top players are playing mostly knight e5 now in this particular move order. This position can be reached by other orders of moves. I had this position against Laszlo Gondo once, I think. But I may be getting confused. Maybe Gondo's bishop was on f5. That's tricky, though. There's different lines with bishop on f5 and bishop on g4. And it's easy to kind of like misremember like which one it was. Alright, this particular position, though, queen b6, if d3 is okay for white. If d takes c, I can take back with the queen on c4. The move order is really important, actually, because black has inner positions like bishop takes f3, and then sometimes the knight's coming to d7. So bishop e3. That looks okay. Nevertheless, I mean, black's position is somewhat solid. But I don't think he can do like knight c5, bishop takes c5, allowing queen takes b7. If this pawn was on e6, there would be no problems, like bishop c5. The move order was a bit strange. Well, as long as you think the chess is quality, that's what counts. Anyway, guys, I'm really happy that everybody joined me here today. The holidays are over, and it's back to the regular work week for most of us. So please check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. And also, if you're interested in lessons, please send me, or any kind of chess-related questions, actually, or regarding the stream or suggestions, you can send me an email, videochesstrainer@gmail.com. That's all in my info on Twitch and here on lichess as well. So I think Spinal Tap, you know, he's given up. He's given me a little, as they say, a pull here, but it's not much. He's weakened the queen side a bit. It's not like really problem for black. I think white's a little bit better, but it's not much. Maybe in the hands of a super technician, this would be an advantage for white, but I'm not sure what to do now. I've seen Svidler play this kind of position for white. Probably Morozevich. Yakovenko. Quite popular, actually. Kramnik. It looks like black is thinking about, he's delayed e6, so he could actually play e5 in one go. I'm wondering if that's something I should try to stop or not. What would I do? Like bishop f4? So h3 and g4, I think I've seen that kind of idea. We could hunt down the two bishops. Well, one of the two bishops anyway. We were just talking about the Slav structure and two bishops last game. It's very vital that this pawn is doubly supported, because otherwise bishop takes f3, and knight e5 would be a problem. That's something that does pop up in these lines. Okay, we have a tiny edge, but it's not that much. Nothing Mr. Spinal Tap probably can't negate. Catapus says, I wanted to send you a nice PDF. What kind of nice PDF? Okay, he said chess PDF. Just wait till if you saw me. Chess players are known for their good looks. It's obviously absolutely essential. g4, bishop g6. Or should we hold off? We could put more pressure on the center with like knight c3, and then we go for it. This is definitely the more active square, but then e5, it gets very complicated if I try to do that. g4. Anyway, g4 probably can't hurt. We could play knight h4. Not that big a deal in the structure, though, to get his bishop. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm playing g4 is to give me the option of g5 and maybe win control of the d5 square in some situations. So if I play knight h4 here, we actually have like g5 and a double attack on d5. I guess we'll do it. I mean, this bishop could become strong, but it's going to take some doing because his pawn structure is all on the white squares. It's pretty solid. I don't have to take the bishop right away. There's also, speaking of Morozevich, I've definitely seen this type idea with the f4. Now he's solid, so there's no e5. All right. Now then knight c3. The question is knight c3 or knight d2. Why do I want to play knight d2? Oh, defend b3. Defend b3. That was what I was thinking. I was wondering what I was thinking. f4 first. I think this is pretty standard so far. There's some Grandmaster games pretty much going along this line. You might not find this exact position, but similar, very, very similar. Bishop e7. So he's just developing. I mean, an f5 maybe doesn't do anything for white. Just even taking it with the knight would be interesting, actually. You could play f5, pawn takes pawn, knight takes f5. And then he's kind of in an awkward situation. Maybe you have to go back with the bishop to f8 or check. I do have to watch my knight on h4. He doesn't have any discoveries at the moment. Maybe the other knight to d2 here. He's threatening knight c5. I can always play knight d2 in the event of knight c5. There might be some kind of discoveries. Alright, so my rook is defended. I'm gonna forego any tactics on my knight on h4. You've got to watch the b3 pawn. Therefore, knight d2. I think white has some sort of infinitesimal advantage here, in the neighborhood of like 0.1, 0.15. Unless I'm overlooking something. It would have been interesting to play f5. That's the only line that I really wasn't sure about. It could be better for white. He's in a little bit of a quandary here because he doesn't know whether to castle or what to do. You know, like castling diminishes his counterplay along the h file. Is this just an illusion? Or is that something that he really is benefiting from? I could consider castling kingside or maybe putting my king on f2 where it stays closer to the center. Well, the king f2 could be awkward. Sometimes my bishop might get trapped on e3. Like c5, d4 becomes a threat. And I also have knight f3, of course. But I have to keep an eye on this pawn. That's a weak point in my position, so bishop c5. Well, it's his good bishop, but trading the bishop pair is generally favorable for black here in this kind of situation, I guess. But I think we should take and play for a space advantage. We actually have b4 and b5. Or d4, just clamping down in the center. Both these plans are interesting. This doesn't give him much counterplay, although he has knight e4, I guess. Knight e4. His b4 fits better with this position, I think. Trying to break up his pawn chain. This knight is relatively quiet. This knight is back on d7. Good knight. The good knights club. b4. Knight b3. He's going to have a knight on c5. Alright, time is of the essence here. I'm not sure about this. I think my king should go to d2, probably. Just to keep c2 in case he goes to the file. We're going to keep that square under control. Now he went castles kingside away from the center. He knows what he's doing strategically. I think that, you know, Tom is a good player. There's no question he's a good player, and there's no question he has a good strategic understanding of the game. So he castled there, though. I mean, I would think king e7, but then he was afraid of knight d4, right? Okay, so that makes sense. He didn't want to put his king on e7. That was probably the right thing to do. And now we've got a great outpost for our knight. We've got to get counterplay. I can't put my knight on c6, obviously. My king is a little touch and go now. Maybe it should go up to e3 and hide back on f2. Because I don't want to get forked by knight b3. Okay. Active king. Active king never cries. I need to protect this, and this is the most efficient way to do it. Because he can bring pressure on b5. What's he doing with knight d7? I don't know. King is a fighting piece. I think white is better. The extra piece. I was expecting a different order of moves there. Okay. All right. I might have d4 at some point. Knight b7. I'll be a materialist. Right, he's fighting back. He's fighting back. Some kind of counterplay, but we want to keep our king in the game. But the C file is going to be awkward. This king is extremely strong. Oh no, I did that? Blundered. I blundered. What's that? This became too much of a time pressure chaos. Come on, mouse, don't fail me now. Alright, Spinal Tap. Nice try, man. You're gonna get me next time. That was a little ridiculous, though. Slightly marred by time pressure. Our brilliant positional victory, not so clean toward the end. I think I was lucky I wasn't like losing after blundering. Maybe it was a draw. I guess just like I blundered my whole advantage, but probably I'm still not lost with best play there. So we're fortunate again against Mr. Spinal Tap. Took him out. Not the cleanest victory, though. A good way to start the new year. Nice messy time scramble. Okay, Meowts. Meowts is not a player I recall. I mean, this could have been, okay, Simul Games, and it was quite a while back. So, okay. I think that Spinal Tap, he likes his blitz with sudden death time control. Sabatini needs some advice in 2 weeks. I'm playing an opponent who's 200 points higher rated. Should I play black with the King's Indian defense or the Slav? Should I play black? What, in the case of a draw, you'll have to play blitz. So you're telling me, like, I think what he's saying is e4 here. I think, no, then knight c6. What am I talking about? This is a good move order by black. Yeah, there's nothing I can do. Okay. It's raided. Snuck one in on me. Thank you for the warning. Yeah, we're not playing rated games. Obviously, I'd be 2600 after beating Spinal Tap. Playing and feeling groggy, but that's alright. Okay, now we have d4. So Meowts is not a regular player here in my stream. He's played me a couple of Simul games, so he didn't realize that he has to challenge to casual, but that's okay. We'll let it slide for today. So I didn't understand your Sabatini, like what you meant. Like if the game is a draw, then there'll be further games where it's like further games like a blitz playoff. Is that what you're talking about? I mean, my general advice to you in general is to play the solid opening against the higher rated opponent. You know, I mean, I think that's just standard advice. So, you know, that would be the default thing to do. But this could transpose to a normal Marazzi. Not really, though, because there's no pawn on e4. I don't like exchanging on c6 here. So knight c2 it is. Much more flexible square than b3, which is like hit by a4 oftentimes in this accelerated dragon type position. The c2 knight can go to e3. So what we're looking at is answering that question about the King's Indian or Slav against the higher rated player. I mean, I think you should go with the Slav in a vacuum. But you're concerned about like a blitz playoff or something where he'd have a much bigger advantage. Is that the point? You feel like you have to beat him now while the time control is slower? It looks like in English. It is in English. But I mean, the Marazzi is a structure. It's not just an opening. I mean, we're talking about a structure. So, like e4. Rook c8 here. Quite an aggressive move. Queen d2. Well, he's going to be hanging his b7 pawn if he tries anything fancy. So I'm just gonna castle. And then knight e3 is possible, but queen d2 looks more standard. Play rook b1 if necessary. Get off the long diagonal. He played bishop e6 now. Obviously knight e3 comes to mind. b3 comes to mind. What's wrong with b3? So guys, have a happy new year. And we'll be back tomorrow. If I play bishop b2, is there some sort of trick in this position? What's the trick? Like bishop b2, d5? Does that make sense? Not really, right? Bishop b2, d5, knight takes d5. And then I'd follow up with like rook b1. Maybe even rook d1 or c1. I do want to watch out for my bishop not being protected. This game will probably last like, yeah, till the end of the stream. So this will probably be the last game unless something quick happens. You would love to play a blitz playoff. Well, I seriously then wholeheartedly recommend the Slav against the higher rated player. I mean, if I'm a higher rated player and my opponent is 200 points lower than me, I'm definitely much more excited to see a King's Indian than a Slav. The Slav is extremely tough to break down. Meouts. Well, I mean, knight e3 kind of seems like a logical follow-up. h3 is another move I might want to consider. So h3, queen d7, king h2. Yeah, I don't think I'm worried about... I mean, that's not such a big deal. I need to waste time with h3 here. If he does something like queen d7 and bishop h3, that's fine. He wastes a lot of time with that plan, so I think this move is better. Defending my bishop on b2, centralizing the knight from the passive square c2, bringing pressure on d5. Yeah, that's better. h3 would have been a really slow move under the circumstances. My record in rated games on my stream, when people surprise me with rated games, is pretty bad. I tend to always lose the rated game. And I don't know if that's just bad luck or any other factors contributing to that. a4 preventing b5. You know, a4 preventing b5, it's a very double-edged sword. So if you do occasionally see that, but drastically weakens the pawn at b3. So that usually, it's more trouble than it's worth when you do that. Yeah. So my general advice is not to this guy's play is pretty incisive here. Meouts, where are you from? Rwanda. Oh, he's from Rwanda. He's the guy from Rwanda. Well, you can never believe where people are from. Some people say North Korea, but I really don't think that... Wow, my screen is like frozen. I really don't think it's allowed to play on lichess from North Korea. So he may or may not really be from Rwanda. Not to compare Rwanda with North Korea, they're just equally rare. Queen a5, rook d1. He's got quite a few games, though. I mean, Bullet, 1700, 3000. Blitz, 1100. And then Classical 402. Well, I think he's played this opening creatively and somewhat incisively. I mean, Queen A5, probably best move. The other plan of Queen D7 looked quite passive, actually. So I thought this is a vast improvement on Queen D7. Now Rook D8. Well, he's never playing D5 here. I've got every single piece on the board on D5. I could weaken myself with H3. Doesn't seem like it's worth it. And now Knight D5 for me. But Knight D5, I mean, this just trades a lot of pieces. I'm not sure if I really retain a lot of an advantage after that. Knight D5, Queen takes Queen, Rook takes Queen, Bishop takes D5, Knight takes D5, Knight takes D5, Bishop takes G7, King takes G7, Bishop takes D5, and White has hardly any advantage after all that. And this is a rated game. When in doubt, develop your last piece. White should be better here. Greater control of the center. If you compare the control of the central squares, I'm better on E4, I'm better on D4. I have massive control of D5. The only square that black controls in the center is E5. So sometimes if you want to evaluate a position, it's good to kind of go back to the basics and sort of, okay, who has better control of the center? You know, whose structure is better? Sort of go down the list of things going on and ask yourself who's really better here and why. B5. Another interesting move. We almost have some kind of tactic based on C6 and A5 being loose. Can we play Bishop takes C6? Rook takes C6, Knight D5. It's not going to work. Looks like he's played perfectly. I don't think there's anything I can do here. Knight takes B5, Queen takes B5. Knight D5, Queen takes, Rook takes. Again, the same old stuff. We trade everything, then he's got like Knight B4 at the end of the day. It's probably just equal. I don't see what else White can do here. Maybe I don't see another constructive move for White in that position. I mean, A3, what am I going to do? Weaken my structure? Black's played quite well. Can't win, go for a draw. Well, I'm not going for anything. I'm just trying to play the best move. But I don't have one result in mind. You know, I'd like to win, but I don't want to be worse. I didn't see a constructive move. Maybe something like h3. It's too passive. I don't want to allow b4 and be tied down to the weak pawn on a2. I thought here there's some tiny chance I could be better in some position. Knight takes d5, right? If I take on a5 there, I'm going to drop a piece, or I'm just hoping we have some kind of tiny advantage in the endgame with the 2 against 1 on the queen side. That's the only thing I can think of. Bishop on the long diagonal and the 2-on-1 queenside majority. I'm not like consciously trying to play for a draw here. I don't know if it's enough. Yeah, there was queen takes a2, rook takes c6 and several variations. There's also rook takes c6 now. Rook takes c6. Bishop takes d5. That's a problem. Rook takes c8. Rook takes c6, bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5. It looks like it's a draw. So this is the variation I was calculating years ago. 3 years ago. When we're like banking on the outside pawn being worth something here, but it's probably too well calculated by white, black, whatever his color is. Looks like he's got it all worked out. I guess bishop e4. It's a little suspicious. No d5. Wow, that's even better than rook b1 check. Or is it? That's a strong move. It's 2017 rated game. Now I have to really think about trying to hold a draw, I guess. Well, we've got the outside pass pawn, so there is hope. I thought he had better with like rook a8 or something. If he had put his rook on a8 instead of on c1. Pretty hard for white to make progress. I'm not saying I'm winning here, but at least there's some hope. It's probably still a draw. He's got a good blockade. Maybe not that easy. He blundered. He offers a draw. Wow. A little late for that. No, he resigned. He offers a draw and resign. I think he was trying to resign, but he offered a draw. I had a friend who used to do that. All right, guys. I think that black was okay there, though. Happy New Year, everybody. We will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. 10 a.m. CET. So I don't know. Black played like rook a8 or something like that. How would I go about winning this position after like here? Rook takes c8, bishop e4. I mean, okay, you can't play rook e8 after d5. That is bishop e1, rook a8. I mean, I'm not really sure how I make progress there. I guess I could slowly try to bring my king over. Alright guys, we'll see you tomorrow. It was fun. Don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. And thanks to Jeroen for moderating. Thanks Spinal Tap taking part here, and everybody else. We'll be back tomorrow. And please donate via PayPal if you can afford even just $5 a year in the coming year. Help my stream and YouTube channel to keep going. Okay, the link's in the info on YouTube and here on Twitch. So thanks everybody. We will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central European Time. Later. Bye bye.